Okay, let's take a look at number 31 here on this worksheet. Looking at these problems, we've been dealing with vertex form, and this is in standard form because there's no parentheses and there's three different terms, basic trinomial. So this is a review on how to graph quadratic equations with trinomials. So, all right, the piece of information that we need to find first is that will help us. There's a formula for it, the axis of symmetry. That's the one thing we can find when nothing else is given. We could also find the x-intercepts and the y-intercepts, but the easiest thing to find to get a picture of my graph is the axis of symmetry, then the vertex. So let's start there. The axis of symmetry is negative b over 2a. So in this problem, number 31, it's going to be negative 8 over 2 times negative 2, which will give me negative 8 over negative 4, which will equal positive 2. So my axis of symmetry is at 2. We'll go ahead and draw my line there on 2. So that's where my graph's going to be cut in half. And remember, the other part of the graph that's on the axis of symmetry is my vertex. So let's plug into the equation, and we'll find out what y is. So if we know the x part of the vertex, we can find the y part by plugging it in. So 2 squared is 4, and 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. 8 times 2 is 16, minus 8. So negative 8 plus 16 is positive 8, and 8 minus 8 equals 0. So the vertex of my graph is 2, 0. Let's go ahead and plot that on there. And then let's just take a look. I see that my a is negative 2. So that means my graph is facing down. And because a is greater than 1, it's going to be a little skinnier than usual. Okay? So that's a basic graph. Like if I just wanted to get a basic understanding of what my graph looks like, that's what it would look like. Now, something that I'll notice about this is that it doesn't cross the x-axis. But every graph, every parabola that we'll have here in the beginning will always cross the y-axis. So how do I find where it crosses the y-axis? We plug in 0 for x. So if we plug in 0 for x, that's 0 plus 0 minus 8. So my y-intercept is going to be at 0, negative 8. So I need to redo my graph to make it cross there because, again, it's skinny. So that's where it crosses. But notice, are there any x-intercepts? Okay. The only x-intercept is at 2, or at positive 2. So x-intercept at 2, and that is where my vertex is. So there's no other roots except that 1, which is my x-intercept, which is my vertex. All right, let's take a look here at number 32. So again, we have another graph. We have another trinomial, a quadratic equation in standard form. So let's find the axis of symmetry, negative b over 2a. So negative 6 over 2 times 3, which will give me negative 6 over 6, which gives me negative 1. Let's go ahead and plug in negative 1. And this is what we're going to get. Negative 1 squared is positive 1 times 3 is 3. 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. So 3 plus negative 6 is negative 3. Negative 3 plus 3 equals 0. So my vertex is at negative 1, 0. There it is. And my y-intercept, we plug in 0 for x. But first, let's get an understanding what this looks like. 3 is a, which is positive, and it's going to be skinny. So there's my idea of the graph. Like I said, for the y-intercept, we plug in 0 for x. So that means my y-intercept is going to be at 0, 3, which is right about there. I was almost right. And the only x-intercept I have is my vertex, and so that's at negative 1. So basically that's the best picture we can get of this graph. And notice that the only intercept is at the vertex. So there's how you graph quadratic equations in standard form.